From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
You might expect someone behind billion-dollar blockbusters to be a larger-than-life personality, but my guest today defies expectations. Despite producing some of Hollywood's biggest action spectacles, Jerry Bruckheimer operates with quiet intensity, letting his work speak for itself. A meticulous strategist rather than a showman, he's known for his razor-sharp instincts, obsessive attention to detail, and an almost uncanny ability to pick winners. The calm at the center of the storm, he brings precision and vision to every production. I am personally just crazy about this man. And Jerry, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here today.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I've had quite a few successes, and you're a big part of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
When you look at my career and you look at the movies that have worked, going through the process with you and your intelligence and the people that write up these reports and the precision of them makes our movies so much better. You have no idea how much it helps us, because sometimes what happens is you'll get a director or a studio who's entranced on a certain idea for your movie. And then the results come in and it's opposite of what they think it is. So it helps us to craft the best kind of film that we can. And also with actors too, when they see that it doesn't have to be everything they want it to be, the audience loves what they've done and you prove it. And then when you do the focus groups and you start asking these questions, and we kind of help craft the questions with you because we want to find out, how do we get in the weeds and what did we miss? I just remember one instance where we had a preview with you of Armageddon, and the audience said to us, he never gave her an engagement ring. Now, these dummy men that made the movie had no idea that you have to give an engagement ring. So we had to go out and shoot another scene where Ben gives her an engagement ring and asks her to marry him. So, I mean, it's so helpful.
There's a particular recent example, and by the way, thank you so much for the acknowledgments for me and my team. I want to ask you, Bad Boys was such a great example of audience testing. Can you talk about it, because you can talk about it rather than I, about how strongly they moved from that first screening until, I want to say, 1 month later?
You know, the editing process is a fascinating thing, because if you have a good director and a good screenplay, you'll shoot as much as you possibly can. So you have a lot of footage and a lot of options. And sometimes we make the wrong choices with that footage, at least for the audience. I mean, we make the right choices for us, but the audience doesn't sometimes agree with us. And Bad Boys is a great example of how that happened. I think the first test we did with you, I think it was in the 70s.
Yes, top two boxes. Yeah. Excellent and very good combined were probably in the 70s and maybe even low 70s.
Yeah.
And it's not like they didn't like the movie. It's just that you hadn't found your rhythm of it. And they didn't really have permission, if I recall, to laugh as much as they wanted to from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that what happened there is that the movie we made had too much angst for Will's character, and the audience doesn't want to know that. They want to see Will as Will Smith, the guy who takes over and a strong, heroic character at the center of the movie, and he wasn't that in the film. So fortunately for us, that test told Will and our directors and ourselves that that's not the path for this movie. And so over a month.
1 month, I just want to tell our listeners, is like nothing. And yet we did probably one a week, and you kept evolving. What did you do?
We just kept shortening and changing, taking things out that the audience didn't like.
And creating a different order so that it created a different cadence. But long story short, version is it went up to the 90s.
It's exactly right.
And I've never done this before, but I framed the top line sheet that I hand out at the end of screenings, and I sent it over to you and to Will, and I think to Chad. and your directors.
Yeah, I thank you for that.
I don't do that, but that was such a great experience, I must say, and Sony was a great partner on it.
Yeah, I think that, again, that comes down to Tom Rothman.
Isn't he the greatest?
He loves movies.
He loves movies.
And he's a great storyteller, and his help on the movie jumped those numbers.
Well, you love movies. I want to acknowledge your respect for the audience. So you said all those really nice things about me. I want to say that it doesn't work only one-sided. You have to have filmmakers and people who are receptive and truly understand who you're making these movies for. And you do. And I see you every screening sitting in the second row of the focus group on the end, on the edge of your seat, immersed, listening. And then when we do the post meetings, you are so engaged and want to know more and more about what did the audience say there? How did the audience react there? And that is, I'm going to just go on a limb and say, one of your superpowers.
Again, I don't make these movies for anybody but the audience. And as long as my taste is in concert with their taste, I'll still be talking to you in more podcasts. But if that changes, I won't be here.
I don't think it can change. Going back to Flashdance and American Gigolo and some of those earlier movies. But I want to start with the young Jerry. Film in your DNA or not? I would say it probably wasn't what you dreamt of doing as a kid, based on what I know. I bet being a hockey star was more in line with...
Yeah, I don't think I was ever dreaming about being a hockey star. I wasn't that good an athlete, but I loved hockey and played it when I was young. You know, I always loved movies, and I just remember from the time I was 6, 7 years old, my mom and my cousins taking me to movies, and I just loved the experience.
What was your first movie you saw?
I'm sure it was a Disney movie, but I can't remember that.
First movie that made an impression on you?
Well, I think the films by David Lean really
as a kid
captured me. The Great Escape, Steve McQueen, some of those big adventure films I really loved.
Did you set out to want to be Mr. Blockbuster? And I mean that in all seriousness. In other words, did you want to make movies that were more personal to you and you stumbled into just understanding what the commercial arts meant?
No, I just make movies I want to see. I don't make movies for an audience because I don't know what they want to see. I just know what I like. And if I like something, I'll try to get it made. It's about big ideas, great characters, great themes, and really good storytelling. And we're really fortunate. We live in a town where there's so much talent with our writers and our directors and our actors. And you just have to put the work in to find the best ones for what you want to do.
What was one of the hardest ones to get made and became one of your most successful?
They're all hard. There's never an easy one. They're just all really difficult. You can go back to Top Gun. When we first turned the script in, the management at Paramount said there was a TV series about the Air Force and it failed. So they decided an audience has no interest in airplanes.
Isn't that the worst?
So we were very fortunate because that management left and a new management came in.
Which regime said yes?
It was Ned Tannen.
Ah.
He called us up to his house in Santa Monica Canyon. I was with Tony Scott and Don Simpson, who was my partner, great showman himself.
Call out to Tony.
Yeah.
Boy, I miss him.
One of the greatest. And Ned said, the cupboards are bare here. I don't have anything to make. I know you have the script, Top Gun. And he said to me, just tell me the story. What is it? And so Don, he just told him this tale about Top Gun. I'm not sure it really was the movie we were going to make, but Ned said, what do you think it's going to cost? And I gave him a number, and he said, go make it.
Now, how'd you get Tom? Because Tom wasn't Tom yet. Tom had done Risky Business, correct? But he hadn't.
Yeah.
Top Gun was his real breakout movie.
He just finished a movie with Ridley Scott. It was a fantasy.
But not like a blockbuster.
No, but it was a good movie.
Did you want Tom from the get-go?
From the get-go. He was the number one. We didn't go out to anybody else. And he was playing very coy with us. So I set up for him to fly with the Blue Angels in El Centro.
Oh, boy, you are so smart. You knew exactly that would get him.
Yeah, he drives down there. He just finished his movie where he's got shoulder-length hair. So he drives down there in his motorcycle, and he's got this long hair, and you see these Navy pilots, and they take a look at it, and they say, we're going to give this hippie the ride of his life.
Oh, great.
And so they twisted him, turned him, and he threw up, and he got out of the plane, and he went to a payphone because there were no cell phones in those days, and he called me up. He said, I'm in. I'm doing the movie.
Oh, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Tell me about going from Detroit to, I guess, Arizona is where you went to school, right?
Yes. The only place it would take me. My grades were so good that I couldn't get in anywhere else.
We share something else I didn't realize. No, my grades weren't bad. My SATs sucked.
I had both, bad grades and bad SATs.
So you were a psychology major and a minor in algebra?
Yes. How do you figure that one out?
I can't.
I guess I have a very logical mind. I have a good emotional intelligence, and somehow putting algebra, there's a definitive answer. And I always wanted a definitive answer, so I really enjoyed algebra.
That's so interesting because that was the only math that I could sort of do. Geometry, I was a disaster in. You know, that abstract thinking and all that. And then forget it, I never made it to trigonometry or calculus. But I was in the arts. I was a child actor, and I started working professionally when I was young, so that was my saving grace. And also had that business sense. So I started a business when I was 17. So I had that left and right brain thing. It's kind of like, I think when kids are now often judged on their intelligence, I often question, what are we really looking at here? You know, I mean, it measures STEM a lot, but not the emotional intelligence, the musical intelligence, the artistic intelligence, and so forth. Aren't you also into photography?
Yeah, I did a lot of photography when I was young. But when I was growing up and I was in like grade school, I'm dyslexic. And you didn't know what dyslexia was when I was growing up.
So there's no diagnosis for it?
No, you're just dumb because you're always in the last reading group. And what my brain does, it inverts words or inverts things. So things are kind of backwards.
Still. So it's hard for you to read a script?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because, and giving speeches, it's hard for me to read a prompter because the words they change in their order. It's really a weird thing.
I would imagine that you've probably overcompensated in some way in your life and have probably found a way around it.
Well, my visual sense and taste is what changed it for me. And that's why photography was so great. I didn't have to perform. I could just take pictures of people performing.
You got a job in a mailroom in
Detroit, for a company called McManus, John and Adams, which had General Motors, Pontiac, and Cadillac. And so I started in the mailroom, worked myself up into the television department as an assistant, and then became a assistant producer and then a producer.
So that taught you the nuts and bolts early on?
Of film. I knew film. I didn't know motion picture.
Yeah, my husband's the same way. He was in advertising in Chicago, Campbell Methune, and he learned how to produce. He was a writer, but he learned how to produce, hundreds of commercials.
That's what we did.
That's incredible. You also have worked with a lot of directors that you've plucked out of music videos, and you've seen the essence of what they can do.
Well, I believe it's not radio. So the visual is really important. And the way you stand out is by having something unique and special and something different than what's on television and what's in theaters.
Did you see that with Michael Bay, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, his work is spectacular. I mean, Spielberg jumped on him right away after we worked with him.
I think he's so gifted. I want to talk about Don. You and Don were so formidable. I remember as a young pisher working at NRG, seeing you guys on those early movies. It was all about Don. He was the guy, and you were sort of in the background. And you gave him that. And the rumors were that you kind of did all the work, and you were the steak, and he was the sizzle. And it worked beautifully. You just told us that story about how he went to Ned Tannen's house.
Right.
When he passed away, we were all devastated for so many reasons. I can only imagine what went through your head when you got that call.
We expected it for a long time. And
that's fair and very honest for you to say.
Because his lifestyle was unfortunately at times out of control. And when he was really down, and we took him to a rehab center. And when he got out, the doctor said, unless you stop this, you're not going to live much longer. Your heart can't handle it. And he said, oh, these doctors don't know what they're talking about. Wow. And 96 is when he died.
But I think it was like 52 or something like that, right? Like,
I was shocked. Even when it happens, you're shocked.
Were you guys like brothers?
Yeah, I mean, we were really close. It was a right brain, left brain kind of relationship.
I was going to ask you if you were angry with him.
I was angry some of the later years that he couldn't get control of his life because he was the greatest, funniest, most brilliant guy. But he had these demons, and the only way to deal with those demons is to anesthetize himself. Wow. And that's kind of terrible. He grew up in a very religious household, and I think that it made him feel guilty for doing the things he liked doing.
When that happened, I remembered thinking, what's Jerry going to do? And what Jerry did, quite frankly, was become the greatest solo producer I think our business has ever seen. Were you scared?
Yeah, I was scared always. I live scared. I'm still scared. I always worry about what's coming up. In other words, what am I missing? We got this movie coming out. How can we promote it better?
It is spectacular. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program, but I want to just stay on your beginning as a solo act. When did you sort of realize, wow, I'm going to be okay? Was that sort of Pirates of the Caribbean?
I always bet on myself.
I love that.
Because when I left advertising in New York, I was making a really good salary. And I came to California to work on a picture. It was called The Culpeper Cattle Company. And it was a small little Western.
I never even heard of it, to be honest.
Billy Greenbush was a star. Nobody's ever heard of him either. So that was a big step for me to come to California for basically no money. I was making $200 a week as an associate producer on the movie. But I bet on myself. I really bet that I figured I could carve a career for myself because I work really hard. I really love what I do, and I work hard at it. And I think the harder you work, the luckier you get.
You don't phone it in. I see it with my own eyes. Listeners, let me tell you, he is completely engaged and actively participating in the success of every movie. You are not going to give up your competitive edge.
Or failure. There's some failures in there, but I'm participating in those too.
You don't make a movie alone. You make it in tandem with a lot of folks. Before I say my theory, let's talk about one of your failures, because I actually have a little knowledge. That's Lone Ranger.
Yes. The discussion when we started making the movie was about the budget. And not about the movie. It was about the budget, what the movie was going to cost. And that became the discussion all the way through the making of it, the releasing of it, rather than this was a really bold choice, the kind of movie that Gore made. And he's a brilliant filmmaker.
Wonderful filmmaker.
Yeah, amazing, amazing talent. And that kind of sunk the movie. It really did. It's really unfortunate.
I remember coming to you now and saying, there's a product that I have called capability testing, which is early green light testing. And you said, oh, tell me more. And I said, well, funnily, we used a bunch of movies. Lone Ranger was one of them. And we were able to show the intensity of the interest early on. And it just wasn't there. Not because it wasn't a terrific movie. I thought it was very well done. But it was being comped as a superhero movie when, in fact, it wasn't. It was a guy with a mask. And it was, of course, Johnny Depp, who was a very big movie star. But at Capability, we don't even put the movie stars' names in yet. We're just talking about purely the concept. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember the results coming back and saying that this is going to do somewhere domestically between 80 and 120. And you said something to the effect of, well, if it does that, we're fucked. And in fact, it did do in that range. I wasn't going to give an actual number, but I knew that the interest just wasn't there in enough of the different, I call them octants, not even quadrants. Boys, girls, moms, dad, teen boys, teen girls, general audience, men, general audience, females. It just wasn't clicking enough boxes. And I said, so it's all about the budget, just what you're saying now. And I remember asking you, I said, Jerry, why didn't you just make it for less? And you're like, we couldn't. And I thought that was a really interesting answer, because the only other answer is don't make it. Am I right?
Yeah, but the budget that was released was highly inflated. But you have to live with it, unfortunately. In Hollywood, there are people that give out information that's inaccurate, and the media believes it rather than checking with the studio.
Now, on the other side, you've had probably more single successes or franchises than any other producer. What's the pressure like when you're getting someone else's money, paying $200 million, whatever it is, on a picture? F1's purported to be way more than that. Is there an enormous onus that you feel?
Yeah, I feel I want to return whatever we spent to whoever gave us the money, the studios or whoever financed it. That's my job, to make sure that A, we make a good movie, B, we bring it in on budget, and C, that we get a return on their investment. That's what a producer's supposed to do. And so we try to put things together that kind of make it to a place where they feel comfortable in spending that money by a great writer, a great director, movie stars, or whatever it is. Or if you can't get movie stars, you make it for such a small amount of money that their exposure is not as much.
Well, what is your feeling about hedging your bets? Where do you do that? Is it in the initial concept? Is it in the stars that you're bringing on? Is it your director's vision? Or are you going to say D, all of the above?
It is all of the above. And you have to, when you interview a director who wants to do the piece of material you gave them, you got to listen to what they say the first time, not what you want them to say.
Oh, that's smart.
And I've had it happen where it turns, they're still making the movie they pitched to you early, not the movie that they're supposed to be making.
I'm trying to understand, like, someone came in and just said, oh my God, that's our director. They nailed this concept so beautifully.
Well, I think Joe Kosinski does it.
Joe Kosinski is a great example, Top Gun Maverick and F1 director. Let's actually take a break here, because when we come back, I'd like to talk all about F1 and that whole process. We'll be back in a moment. If you're curious about how movies actually turn a profit, I've got something for you. My upcoming book, How to Score in Hollywood, dives into the intersection of creative instinct and audience insight, and where the business of film meets the art of storytelling. The book is available for pre-order now on your favorite bookseller platform. I'm also putting together a book launch team, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. We're looking for people to help spread the word ahead of our November release, and also to leave a short book review after its release. In exchange, you'll get early access to the book, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and more. Sign up to join my launch team or for book updates at kevingetz360.com. And as always, thank you for your support.
We are back with the GOAT, the greatest of all time, producer Jerry Bruckheimer. Jerry, F1, what can I say? I saw the film months ago, and it was an experience. It was a ride. Did you know that you were going to come out of the gate as hot? Have you seen a screening, by the way, score as high as that one did right out of the gate?
I don't think that's ever happened. I think that was one of the first times that we've ever had a screening that was that exciting for an audience. And yet we even made it better after that screening.
Well, we're going to unpack that, because that's you, and the two of us have insatiable desires to wring out every ounce of potential. And you're relentless. You're a researcher's dream. Tell me about the conversation you have with your director, for example, when you get extremely high scores and everyone else's inclination might be, lock it. Where's your head go?
Well, we go through the picture together. We'll sit down and I don't give notes. I don't write out notes. I've never written out notes for a movie. I will sit with the director and the editor, and we'll go through every scene, and we'll say, what can we change? Is this working? Is this economical? Is there anything we can lose here? Is this something that is not part of developing the character or moving the plot forward? And we'll just go through it, and we'll go through it a number of times after each preview. Joe is very receptive to what the audience tells him. So what your focus group and what your notes said, Joe followed him to a T. He's like a producer's dream.
By the way, let's say he did it on Top Gun Maverick as well. What a gifted director, too. And aside from being a nice effing guy, he's just a really quality filmmaker.
Yeah, he really is. He's a trained engineer and architect, so everything is very precise.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went to engineering school.
That does not surprise me now that you're saying that.
His technical expertise is unbelievable. What he goes through, like the screening we had, he goes in there and it's listed as an Atmos theater.
Sure.
He goes in there. They never turn the Atmos on.
Oh, Christ.
So.
Didn't we move screens or something?
Yeah, but he fixed it. He got a whole tech team in, and they fixed it.
You know who else is like that, by the way, is Jim Cameron.
I'm sure.
Jim is dogged that way. I remember testing Titanic back in the day, and I arrived at the theater, and Jim is literally lugging a pole for lights because he's going to place the lights in the right place so people could fill out their questionnaires. I was like, this dude's the real deal, man. This is something else.
How did that test?
Unbelievably well. Now, that was akin to Gone with the Wind. If you remember the story, the legend, and I heard this from Sam Goldwyn Jr. told me this because David O. Selznick told him that when they tested Gone with the Wind, they went down, I think it was either Riverside or Pomona. They had 2 caravans leaving the studio because it was so highly anticipated. And everyone wanted a peek. And so they had a fake group that went to one and the real one went to the other. And legend was they locked the doors during the screening so no one could leave. That was not true. There was barely any traffic because people were so riveted. Titanic was also so highly anticipated. The budget overruns and people, it was Schadenfreude. People, I think, wanted to not see it succeed. We recruited it as a fake movie. So the audience was there ready to see, I think it was Great Expectations. And they're in the seats, and I had to get up in front of the audience and announce, you're not here to see Great Expectations. You're one of the first audiences to see Titanic. And it was a wind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That came at me and literally threw me against the screen. I had it recently with Tom again on Mission Impossible.
Sure.
When I mentioned Mission Impossible, they went nuts. And it's such a great moment. It is to me, and you'll appreciate this, it's almost like that perfect moment between audience and studios and filmmakers where you're going to learn that people give a shit and to what extent. And it's the rawest read. So when that movie opened, Titanic started, and you saw the water, literally the waves of folks were just apoplectic. It scored through the roof. There were some changes done for pace, some tightening, but by and large, it was a perfect picture.
That's great. I loved it.
It's a great story, though, isn't it?
Yeah, great story.
So this was not that far off, is what I'm saying, your experience. And yet, you said you found ways to bring up, I mean, how much more could we have raised the scores? And yet you did. Jerry, I want to talk about some people you've worked with in your past who have great meaning to you, I'm sure. One of them is someone we lost recently, Gene Hackman.
Yeah, I made 3 movies with him.
Exactly. Tell me about him and how intimidating he was for the other folks on the pictures.
Consummate professional. You're not going to find an actor that is on time, knows his lines, ready to go to work, willing to collaborate with other actors and the director, and works very hard. He was just a joy to work with. He was tough. I just watched how he worked with a young actor, Will Smith, when we did Enemy of the State, and how patient he was with Will. Because Will took like 3 takes or 4 takes to get up in a rhythm, and Gene would hold back. As soon as he knew Will was in rhythm, he just let it go.
That's self-preservation, but also very respectful of his fellow actor. Eddie Murphy.
Oh, boy. You know, you see him light up on the screen and in person, but he's really shy. He's a sweetheart.
He's so sweet, isn't he?
He's a sweetheart, and he's such a great observer of society and the world, and that's where his humor comes from.
Another one that you and I worked very closely was the reboot about a year ago.
Beverly Hills Cop.
And another success story. It did very well on the service, didn't it?
It sure did.
But you were relentless on that. You tested it over and over because you wanted to get it right. It was a legacy piece for you and for Eddie. And you wanted to make it as perfect as you could.
And we went out and picked up some scenes to make it even better.
And
we do
did.
that a lot.
I love that. Do you actually hold money back?
We do.
Is that almost always on that level movie?
Pretty much.
On that level budget?
We did it on just about every movie, including F1. We never had to go back and shoot anything. So we got it right the first time.
And just asking, but does the money go back to the studio?
Of course.
Damn.
We wanted to put it in the advertising, that's all.
Now that's smart. Tell me about Johnny Depp.
Yes.
How was that working with Johnny?
He's the sweetest guy. He's
brilliant, though.
He's really an artist. He's a painter and poet and a writer.
Yeah, literally an artist.
Yeah, he's really an artist. And he lives an artist lifestyle. That's what he lives. And he came to Hollywood when he was very young. First went to Florida, left school because he had a tough home life. Not terrible, but just wanted to get out of there. And moved to Florida. He wanted to be a rock and roll star. Never got any traction. Moved out here and didn't get any traction. And he was living at Nick Cage's house. He met Nick, and he was sleeping on Nick's couch.
That sounds like Hackman and Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, they worked for a moving company.
They did?
Yeah. They were lugging furniture, the two of them.
Mike Medavoy mentioned to me that Walter Hill was in the mailroom with him and John Badham. I was like, you're kidding. Like, everyone did something.
That's right.
Is there a director that you haven't worked with that you'd really love to?
Oh, there's so many great directors. There really are. And, they're always booked. I'm impatient.
I mean, it's such a big commitment.
Yeah, when we get a script, right, when the studio wants to make it, we got to find the best who's available because I can't sit there and wait. Because what happens is you wait, the director becomes available, then he decides, wait, I have this passion project. Let me try to fit that in. And then you're pushed out another year. So I really believe you got to find a director when the studio wants to make it.
You ever lose your temper?
There are times when you find people who are dishonest with you, sure.
You fire someone almost always at the beginning of a movie. It's a very common trait to set the stage of.
No, if they deserve it, sure, but
you don't do it as a normal course of action.
No, never.
Tony Scott, we brought up. He had a great meaning for you, and I just revered the man. I thought he was incredible. Such a tragic end to his life. They don't make him like that a lot anymore.
No, he was the hardest working director ever. I mean, they all work hard. Every
sensitive,
one of them.
though. There's a leitmotif to your movies, Jerry. They're muscular, male-driven, primarily, not all. You've got Flashdance and others like that. That's not an accident. It must be what you really respond to.
It's what I like. Look at the movies I liked when I grew up. It's the same kind of movies I try to entertain myself and entertain audiences with that. But we do other types. We did Veronica Guerin. We do movies that are about individuals or groups that will be forgotten in time, that should be remembered. Black Hawk Down, those 18 men that died. Their families thanked me.
That was Ridley.
Yeah, it was Ridley.
And that was so powerful.
And they'll never be forgotten now.
I was just going to say, as you get older, do you find yourself being more mindful of the theme or what the movie is about as opposed to the commerciality of it?
I don't think about commerciality. I just think truly don't.
Never have?
Never have. I just try to make movies that I love, that I think other people will like. But I don't know what they'll like. We made movies that, like Young Woman in the Sea, which is a small, little, tiny movie.
That was a very small movie, but a very good one.
Very good movie. I never thought it was going to be this huge, big success. I thought it was just a really wonderfully told story. So we made that. We made Veronica Guerin and Remember the Titans. And again, about people that shouldn't be forgotten. And
I love that. Well, that's a great theme. Has there ever been a movie that got away from you that you were like, oh, damn, I wish I made that?
A lot of movies I wish I made, but I never had the opportunity. There are so many great movies out there.
But was there one that you said either like, I don't know, let them do it, or it just gnawed at you?
Silence of the Lambs. We had an opportunity to get involved, and I didn't want to live in that world.
Ooh.
Because you live in that world. I love the movie.
Very macabre.
Yeah, but I just didn't want to be there.
That's a great example. It's funny, I asked Medavoy the same question, and his was Pulp Fiction. He had said he had just come back from Washington, and they were giving him shit about making too many violent movies. Not him, but Hollywood. Yeah. And so he's like, well, how can I make this? And he felt like that would have been one that got away. I wanted to segue to, again, one of your passions, and you made a joke of it that you're not very good, but hockey. You own a hockey team, right?
I'm one of the investors of the Seattle Kraken. Yeah.
How did that name, Kraken? Is it a Viking name or something?
No, it's a sea monster is what it is. And it's kind of a fable in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest about the Krakens in the sea. So that was a fan favorite, and that's how the name came about.
Did you play as a kid, though?
Yeah, I did.
Detroit? Because,
poorly.
I'm from Jersey, and hockey was not great. But listen, we have friends like Brian Turner and Matt Ratt who you play with.
Yes.
Who've said you're pretty good, man.
I'm not really. They're pretty good. I'm not.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to say that clearly it's a love of yours, and the fact that are you still playing?
I haven't played much since COVID. I haven't been here. We made 4 movies last year, and they were all over the place.
And you show up.
I'm there. Can't be there every day, obviously, but I'm there. And then we made F1. It was a 3-year process.
That's a 3-year process,
yeah,
F1?
3-year process. It took a year between writing the screenplay and getting F1 to believe we're going to make a movie that's going to make them look good. And then we had to convince all the teams. There are 10 teams. Each team has 2 drivers. And every team thought they were going to be the villain. And we had to convince them that it's not about that. It's about the competition between these 2 drivers, which is commonplace in F1.
And by the way, no spoiler alert, but I am going to say that there is some nefarious potential action that's happening there. So I can understand why they're cynical. It's a cutthroat, and it's so expensive, the sport, just to compete. $400 million?
Yes. You have no idea when you watch an F1 race and you see the teams, you see the guys who change the tires and the pit stops, and you see the garage. But there are 1,000 people back in either England or somewhere else who's monitoring everybody. It's unbelievable. And when you see the movie, we show you a scene where he goes to the factory where the car is made. And you see all the people there. You can't believe it.
You know what excites me also? When I asked a question in the focus group, I remember this, again, a few months ago when we talked about it at the screenings. How many of you now want to see an F1 event or do something with F1? And like the hands kept going up. Like this movie is going to open up a whole new, I think, subculture.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very exciting sport, very competitive. And
have you always been involved in racing, like since Days of Thunder?
I follow it. I wasn't a huge F1 fan until I got into this movie because it was kind of distant for me.
I got to confess, neither was I.
But now I am. I follow it every week.
Since you exposed me to it, I've been much more conscious of it. This is a very important sport.
Well, these guys are going 220 miles an hour, and then they have to hit a corner and brake down to 50. And the ones who brake at the last second are the ones who are the best drivers. So I guess the craftsmanship, I don't know what you call it, but the athleticism of these drivers is unbelievable.
I would say it's both craft and skill.
And if you see them, they start when they're 5, 6 years old in these little go-karts, and then they go to open wheel, and then when they're 12 or 13, they go to Italy or some of the where the big circuits are.
Well, Brad Pitt's character, Sonny, it's in his blood. You get that.
Yeah.
This is a man who does nothing else, wants to do nothing else. And I have to say, I relate to that in what I do. I've never wanted to do anything other than be in the movie business since I came out of the womb. Or maybe you could say I want to be a performer more than I wanted to.
Well, you are.
I am.
You are a performer, an excellent one.
So let's talk about TV before we
Sure.
break. You've had a little success in television. I'm being funny, listeners. Something called The Amazing Race. How many Emmys have you won?
I think 10.
10 Emmys. That's nothing. How about CSI?
That was on for 16 years. And it's still playing. I mean, it's still on, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon or wherever. It's still
And your big one right now.
Fire Country. It's a big success.
So popular.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's process. I love process.
Do you love television as much as you love movies?
Oh, yeah, I love it. I'm not on the day-to-day
Sure.
television.
Well, you can't be. Come on.
I have a great team that does it. But I read every script. I watch every episode. We've done well over 2,000 episodes.
That's astounding.
So
is Linda, your wife, like, oh, no, not again, Jerry? Can't watch another one?
No, I do it when I'm on the treadmill, so she doesn't have to get involved. So I'm on the treadmill on the weekends and read scripts and watch episodes.
And I can tell by the way in which you said that, the love that you still have. My final sort of probing here is about where we're going. My book is coming out in November called How to Score in Hollywood, my second book, my first being Audienceology. And it really talks about getting to the green light. It talks about using audience research or not and getting to those big decisions. Is the blockbuster alive and well?
We'll find out.
Are movies, theatrical movies, alive and well?
I think so. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think so.
How have you embraced or come to terms with the streamers as such a presence today? In other words, how have you shifted or pivoted?
When you have an idea or a screenplay or something that you're passionate about and you want to get made, we have so many more outlets now than we had when I first started in the business.
Good point.
And so as a producer or as an actor or as a writer, you have opportunities that you've never had before. So if we get turned down by, let's say, all the major studios, we can go to Amazon, we can go to Netflix, we can go to all the different streamers and get something that we're passionate about that they become passionate about.
Beautiful. What are you most proud of?
That I'm still here. I'm still doing it, and I love doing it.
It was a very fast answer and a very accurate one, I imagine.
And I think that I'm just proud of all the audiences over the years that got entertained by the movies that I've made. But I didn't really make them. I put the pieces together that got them made, and the great actors, the great directors, the great writers that were fortunate enough to come together and make a movie that audiences embraced. And that's what I'm really proud of.
Well, all I can say is on behalf of the listeners of this show and audience members around the world, we thank you for entertaining us, for enlightening us, educating us, and for just being, on a personal level, just a good friend and always up for whatever I ask you doing. And I'm a little verklempt when I say it because as I also get older, I start appreciating relationships and the depth and the authenticity of those relationships. And you're the real deal, man. Thanks so much again, Jerry.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. I encourage you to watch many of the films discussed. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon, or through my website at kevingoetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome originator and executive producer of the Batman and Batman-related movie franchise, Michael Uslan. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.